yay, man. All out of options, nothing to choose. I pieced out on Netflix, I'm sick of the news. I'd sign up to Sky, but I don't wanna pay. I've been on furlough since May. Now I'll go and listen to a Cockney and a George. Ooh, breaking away. Got to find a better way. I'd rather watch Auf Wiedersehen again and listen to what these old men have to say.
And hello, and guten Tag, and welcome back to episode 5 of Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast with me, your host, Andy Sledge, and my co-host and partner in crime, Mr. George Bradley.
Hello.
George, how the devil are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah. We're already on episode 5. Seems like a lifetime, but here we are.
Absolutely flying in it is. Absolutely flying in. So, have you had any more so last week you were throwing out jeans because you were getting too fat. Tell us about your clothing disasters from this week, George.
I ordered a pair of trainers, but I had a few beers and so ordered the wrong size. So hopefully I might have to tie my feet in bandages and Japanese style and try and get into them. Or maybe I have to cut the toes out.
I mean, you know, you've been the same size shoe for 40 years, haven't you, George?
Yeah.
And you decided to order the wrong size.
Yeah, well, I think
how many beers had you actually had?
Oh, quite a few. It'd been a long day at home in lockdown, so yeah.
Yes, so another week over, another lockdown week over. I personally have started training again. So my Facebook memories came up. This time last year I was training for that boxing match and I fractured my eye socket.
Oh yeah, I remember it well.
And so I was in quite good shape this time last year. And then I had the operation on my eye and the lockdown hit and I got really fat.
Join the club.
I weighed myself the other day and it wasn't a pretty sight. So I'm back on my diet and I'm back training again, doing one-to-ones and stuff.
We haven't really talked about your teeth.
Well, yes. I mean, things you brought it up. Yes, so...
it hasn't come up.
I did have my teeth done, yes. So I had a car accident when I was 20.
Yeah.
I lost quite a few. Like, the roof of the car came down and hit me in the face.
Oh.
Hit a fucking horse, yeah? So the ex-bird was driving up this country road. A fucking big black horse ran out in front of the car.
Jesus.
Like the
Lloyd's bank horse.
Yeah, like the back leg of the horse hit the middle of the car. The horse flipped up and landed on the roof of the car.
Fucking hell.
The car came in and fucking smashed all my teeth out. And
Jesus. That's a story and a half, that is.
Yeah, so I got out the car, like fucking sliced all my hands open with a windscreen, all my face and that, scars on my head, scars on my hands, and she got out without a scratch.
Oh.
Well, I got $5,000 for it, like, but that was, Anyway, so years later, fast forward 20 odd years later, and my teeth were completely fucked, basically.
Yeah.
They were all crowned and capped and bridged and whatever, and I hated them. And they were crisscrossed, and they were horrible. So I bit the bullet, and last year I went.
They done it pretty quickly as well, didn't they? I mean,
in a week. Yeah. So I went over to Turkey and got all my teeth porcelain veneered. So now I'm like, kidding. Yes. So now I've got the teeth. I just need to lose the weight, and I'll be back to some semblance of being handsome again.
The teeth are fixed. The waist's fucked now.
Exactly. The waist's completely fucked. So yes. So anyway, we're doing something about it. But anyway, so less about my hamsteads and George's feet, and more about the podcast. So as always, we welcome feedback, suggestions, criticism, and even abuse on our email address, which is aufwiedersehenagain@gmail.com. That's Auf Wiedersehen Again @gmail.com. Please do follow us on social media. Instagram is @Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. So that's Instagram @Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. Twitter @Auf Again. That's Twitter @Auf Again. Facebook, please do like and share the Facebook page of Wiedersehen Again Podcast. And if you follow us on social media, you will know that we are now in our second week of our giveaway competition. Giveaway. And we are running the competition for one more week till next week. And you have got the chance to win the Pat Roach biography, If. So what you need to do, if you want to win the Pat Roach biography, we have put posts up on social media, and you need to like the post. You need to tag 3 friends in the post who are also fans of Pat Roach and or Auf Wiedersehen Pet, or anyone you like, really. And you need to share the post as well. So you've got to like, you've got to follow, you've got to like, you've got to tag, and you've got to share. And you do that, and we will be picking a winner at random next week, and we will be announcing the winner next week of our first giveaway, the Pat Roach biography, If. So please do follow the social medias. And if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're not, head over to YouTube if you're listening on one of the many podcast platforms. And what we would like you to please subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast, and click that bell, and that will alert you to any new episodes. And new episodes are broadcast every Friday at 10 a.m. Like I say, so we're on YouTube, but we're also on all good podcast platforms: Spotify, iTunes, Anchor, Google Podcast, Breaker, Soundcloud, and many more. And as always, our theme music is composed and performed by the guitar man, Lee Dosky. So please do like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, here at Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast, we are sponsored by Top Gun Tattooing of number 12, the Harris Arcade in Reading. And their website is topguntattoo.co.uk. Their telephone number is 01189 968 667. And we have a couple of fantastic offers for the watchers and listeners of the Auf Wiedersehen Again podcast. So number 1 is any single tattoo that you want. Being a listener of our podcast, you can get yourself a 20% discount. So in order to get your 20% discount of any tattoo, you need to contact Zach from Top Gun Tattooing, and the code for the 20% discount is you need to say to Zach, Hadaway and Shiteman. And if you say to Zach, Hadaway and Shiteman, he will give you a 20% discount off the tattoo. But we're not just satisfied with offering discounts, are we, George?
No.
Free. We are going to offer our listeners and our readers a free tattoo. Terms and conditions apply. The terms and conditions that apply are, if you go into Top Gun Tattooing and you get the Neville and Lottie tattoo tattooed on your arm, we will pay for it, and it will be absolutely free of charge. So if anybody wants a free tattoo, all you got to do is email us at Auf Wiedersehen Again @gmail.com, and we will escort you into Top Gun Tattooing and pay for your tattoo.
And film it if you require.
Absolutely. If anybody does it, they will. In fact, George, you haven't got any tattoos, have you? Oh, you got you got a couple of little ones. That's right. Yeah. But have you got one on your arm there, George?
No, only this one, this stray one. That's it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the fact is, I've already got a tattoo on my arm there, so I can't get the Neville and Lottie tattoo. But you could, if you really wanted.
I could, yeah, if I really wanted.
Definitely think it's something for you to think about. So, that's all the boring stuff over and done with.
If I have 10 beers, I could get it tattooed on my forehead, I suppose, as well, yeah.
Even I wouldn't be so cruel, George. I mean, don't get me wrong, it would be hilarious, and I would happily buy you the 10 beers and happily pay for the tattoo.
We could laugh for the rest of my life, actually, yeah, it'd be quite good.
It would be a talking point. Down the pub, down the old Witherspoons with the rest of the degenerates. You can talk about your Neville and Lottie forehead tattoo.
Yeah.
Anyway, so episode 5 of the podcast. So today we are going to be processing and reviewing the series 1, episode 5 of Auf Wiedersehen Pet, and the episode is entitled Home Thoughts from Abroad. So the episode was first broadcast on the 9th of December 1983, and for the first time it's slightly confusing. I don't know if you noticed this yourself. So if you go onto IMDb and look at the episode, it actually credits the writer as Stan Hay.
Oh, right, I didn't see that.
It says at the beginning of the episode in the credits, it said obviously created by Dick Clement and Ian LaFreniere, and then on the very, very back end of the episode, I think, or it says, produced or created by or made by Stan Hay. But anyway, so Stan Hay gets himself a writing credit in this particular one. So that is the boring trivia so far of the episode. So, like I said, Stan Hay is given a credit, and the episode opens in usual fashion, and the lads are on the site, and as usual, Oz has something to say about the Germans.
Complaining as usual, yeah.
So the main themes that we're going to see through this episode is Oz's xenophobia and borderline racism, and
as was prevalent in those days.
Yeah, as it was, and Neville's desperation to make his wife happy with financial means. So Oz is complaining about German bricklayers. He says he's not using enough muck. He said it should be spread he's spreading it like Marge, and it should be spread like butter.
Well, he's a craftsman. Yeah.
That he does. He says that. And Dennis is obviously, this is a common theme. He's like Dennis says, here we go. It's a Friday afternoon lecture on the deficiency of German workmanship. And like you say, Oz is like, I'm just making a comment as a craftsman. Yeah. But I'm not no disrespect to a bricklayer. I'm sure that I couldn't do it, and I'm sure and as a friend of mine, a bricklayer, I'm sure it's a highly sought after skill. But yeah, he's I think he's taken his he's blown his own trumpet a little bit too loud there. And I'm sure that the Germans are doing a fine enough job. But you notice, because they're on the top there, if you notice, there's a block of flats in the background.
Oh, right, yeah.
So that's a block of flats in Elstree. So behind Elstree Studios. So if you go on, there's the fan site, Auf Pet. I think it's aufpet.com or auf-pet.com. It tells you all about those flats on there. And so obviously Oz is like, I'm just saying because I'm a craftsman, and Dennis is like, you just can't stand Germans. And Bomber's like, last week it was the scaffolding. And and Neville corrects him. He's like, no, it was the shuttering last week. It was the scaffolding 2 weeks ago. And Oz is like, well, all I'm saying is I wouldn't like to live in them houses when they're finished. Couple of years and the walls will have more holes in them than Newcastle United's back four. But unfortunately, times don't really change that much, and Newcastle United are still absolutely shit. So he brings up the term jerry built.
Jerry built, yeah.
And Oz tries to blag the fact that he knows what it means, and it's to do with Germans. But obviously nobody believes him. Everyone's like, shut up, man. And he says, well, it's common sense, isn't it? Built by Germans, crap quality, substandard, jerry built.
Yeah.
And then Nev brings up the Berlin Wall. He says, well, they did a good job with the Berlin Wall dividing the city overnight.
Yeah.
And Oz like, well, I can't argue with that. But then, as Oz is always trying to have the last word, he said, but that was East Germans, Union Labour.
Union Labour.
Not these untrained scabs. I mean, that's you know, he's taking things a bit too far there. And Dennis is like, look, man, keep it down. And as much as I'm sure that the Germans either number one don't understand us anyway, regardless of what he's actually saying, but also I'm sure they don't understand the term scabs either.
Oh, no.
I mean, but anyway, so Dennis is like, look, keep it down, and I was like, I'm right, I know I'm right, and he brings Barry into it. He tries to get the
man of all knowledge.
Yeah, tries to get validation, and obviously Barry being the the font of all useless information. He's like, can you tell us about Jerry Built? And Barry's like, well, actually, yeah, I can. So, and what is Barry? And Barry brings it up again. His favourite subject is the West Brummagem district, but not the building society this time.
No, the Methodist Church.
The Sunday Methodist Quiz League. He was captain for 2 years, don't you know?
Oh.
And he's still.
Yeah, that was a whole heap of fun.
Oh, aye, barrel of laughs on a Sunday evening. And he obviously still very bitter. He said he would have been captain for 3 years, but he was usurped by Denzel Robinson.
Oh.
But Denzel was the Verger's son. And he's like, it's all about nepotism. And Oz, anyway, so Barry walks up the ladder and Oz is like there spinning his trowel. He does it quite deftly, you know what I mean? And do you remember what Oz's trowel is called?
Oh, no.
Roland.
Oh,
his trowel Roland. It's mentioned in a later episode.
Oh, I never picked up on that. Okay.
But yeah, so Oz is spinning Roland around his trowel. And Barry proceeds to tell them about why it was called why it was Jerry built, and it was about the story of Jericho, and he said it was Joshua and the Israelites, they marched around the city walls for 7 days, blew the trumpets, and the walls fell down. And then Dennis is like, well, there you go, you can't argue with the Bible. And Oz again trying to have the last word. The walls can't have been very strong in the first place. And then he said, we're talking about biblical times, thousands of years ago. And what did Oz say? He said, well, it was probably built by a German.
Yeah.
Yes, in Jericho, in biblical times, there was German builders.
Yeah. Built like Jericho, as in Jerry built.
Yeah. So anyway, they cut to the admin hut, and they're obviously waiting for the wages once again, as they were a couple of weeks ago. No McGowan this week though, and however, no McGowan. But who else? This is a bit of a spot. So an extra when they cut to the hut, who is seen? Well, I mean, this is me. I think so. It's not confirmed, but someone posted it in one of the Facebook groups the other day as well. Who is stood in the background as an extra? Do you know?
No, didn't see that.
Right. Do you remember EastEnders when it first started back in like the fucking
in the days when I used to watch it? Yeah.
So there was a character that owned the calf. Was Ali Osmond.
Oh, Ali, yeah. As in Oz Cabs,
Yeah, Oz Cabs, and Ali fucking owned the calf. And
him and Sue.
Well, Ali, I'm sure it's him. I mean, it's got to be him.
Oh, I have to go back on that one.
He's an extra, and he's in the background, and Ali from EastEnders is an extra, no speaking, and obviously he's not credited at the end or anything like that. But yes, so and they're as they're waiting at the door, the Germans are leaving the site and they're going home. And Bomber paints this picture, and Nev's obviously jealous. And Bomber paints this picture about having a cold beer and warm slippers, and then Wayne says, he goes, then they'll be in front of the TV for Coronation
Straza. Yeah.
And then they'll have a leg over. And Moxie's like, is that all you think about? And Wayne's like, only when I'm awake. He says, when I'm asleep, I dream of carpentry. Oz is like, the standard plan. What are we going to do tonight? We're going to have something to eat in the hut and then go for a drink down the club.
Yeah.
Dennis is like, wow, we've not done that for the last 24 hours, have we?
Yeah, good idea.
And Barry starts talking about health food. Barry, on one of his little missions, he's obviously read an article somewhere or whatever, and he's talking about roughage. And Oz is like, what's roughage like? And Barry draws this parallel, and he says, well, if your bowels were Jericho, roughage is a trumpet.
Yeah.
Oz is like, what, cenopods? You know, obviously. And Barry was like, no, I'm more thinking about bran or a curry. And Dennis says, you know, shame we're in Germany. You could go to Bradford for a fucking takeaway. I mean, that's a bit far to go for a takeaway to Bradford. But obviously casting the stereotype that Bradford's full of curry houses.
Yeah.
Anyway, Herr Ulrich comes out the hut, the admin hut, and he shouts, Busbridge, calls Bomber over and says, the telephone's for you. And Bomber's like, what? And Nev makes a joke, says he's probably won the jackpot, like talking probably about the pools. Bomber says, not with my luck. And Den says to him, you know, ask Herr Ulrich if there's an Indian restaurant. So Bomber picks up the phone, and it is his wife, Patsy. And obviously you're not privy to the conversation, but they cut to the hut, and Wayne's cooking the sausages.
Yeah.
And Barry starts slagging them off. You know, Barry's probably been fucking eating sausages for every meal since he arrived.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden he says, that's truly disgusting. You know, he's been on a fucking health kick for 5 minutes. And he's like, it's just fat and grease. And he's obviously taken a hostage with Moxie. You know what I mean? He wants someone to come on the health kick with him. So clearly, as it develops throughout the episode, you know, they're giving up alcohol, giving up the fatty foods, everything like that. And for some reason, Moxie decides he's going to get roped in with Barry. And so Wayne's like, there's nothing wrong with sausages. I need the meat to keep me pecker.
No. Yeah.
So, and then he obviously then, you know, says to Moxie and Barry, he says, I need the meat to keep me pecker up, so I understand why you don't need it, or you don't understand it. And Barry's like, you know, he's like, well, any aphrodisiacal qualities can be obtained with various herbs and spices.
You're pretty good at that accent, I must say.
Well, yeah, I'm sure I've probably been practicing for a while. It comes and goes, though. Sometimes it doesn't sound as good. And then Moxie brings up ginseng and
ginseng, yeah.
Barry's like, yeah, China's magical root. And anyway, Wayne says, I can get a root with 3 gin and oranges.
Gin and orange, yeah.
So, this must have been a thing, was it, back in the fucking 80s, gin and orange? Because we're right, this is a...
Well, it's like Malibu and pineapple as well. Girls used to...
Well, we're going to give a side, let's a little bit of a tangent. If I said the words gin and orange, what does that make you think of?
Well, apart from gin and orange...
So you know,
no. I'm thinking of Faulty Towers.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking of.
That was vodka and orange, wasn't it? That's a screw.
There's the bit in Faulty Towers where the man's trying to get he goes, can I have a gin and orange, a lemon squash, and a scotch?
Oh, yes. He's the guy, yeah.
And he's in the bar and keeps on asking for it. And then at the end, he comes out and he goes, a gin and orange, a lemon squash, and a scotch and water, please. And like,
that's it.
I'm like anytime I hear the word gin and orange, it just makes me think of that dude from
lemon squash and a
gin and orange, a lemon squash, a scotch and water, please. And then at the end, Basil
Faulty cracks completely. Doesn't he frog march him into the bar?
Pours him the drinks and that, yeah. So anyway, Wayne, so he's and Barry's like, any cheap sexual innuendo can't destroy my argument. And Wayne tries to get Moxie, and he's like, do you fancy one, Moxie? And Barry's like, puts his foot down. He's like, fat, grease, and gristle lead to acne and heart attacks, Moxie. He's basically saying, you know, you need to fucking avoid it. So
Moxie's halfway there with the acne. Yeah.
Well, exactly. So Moxie puts it down, and Barry's been bullying Moxie there, and he gets his own way, basically, Barry. And so Nev's scrounging up coins for the phone to ring Brenda as usual. Dennis and Oz chip in.
He does that a few times. That's not the first time. He does it in later episodes as well.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to think. I mean, I wonder how much it costs. It would have costed You know, I mean, like, if you go into a phone box and make an international phone call.
Yeah, we had no mobile phones back then.
Yeah. I mean, it must have been a fairly expensive way of communicating back in the day. So Oz is, again, you know, Oz has got his idea of Oz's perception of right and wrong, or, you know, Oz's perception of what's acceptable behavior is so
soppy behavior, he thinks.
Exactly, is so far away from the norm, and he's like, I don't know why I'm coughing up for this soppy behavior. And Nev, again, you know, stands up for himself, and he's like, it's not soppy, Oz, it's a gesture of affection between two people who are reluctantly parted, but I don't expect you to understand. And Oz's like, what do you mean by that? And he's like, you know fine well, you only call your Marjorie when you want some money. And I mean, like, I'm surprised he even gets away with that. He says, it's not true. I rang on Monday to find out the
Yeah.
And, you know, Dennis is sat at the table, and he's like, look, you two pack it in, you're like a centrinians. And Nev's, you know, oh, look, I'm sorry. And Den looks at him, he says, I'm talking to him, not you. And Oz again plays the victim. He's like, well, it would be me. And Nev's like, no, sorry, it's me. Friday nights, I get really pissed off. You work every hour God sends to get money, and the only way to get through the weekend is to blow the money that you've earned. Obviously, Nev's sown the seeds and laid the foundation for the, you know, the actual, you know, the theme of the episode of him going to get a part-time job.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're right.
You need a good skinful.
So he says, and Nev's like, it's a vicious circle. And he says, what you need is a good skinful of beer. Like, just, again, absolutely missed the point, didn't listen, didn't understand. You know, like, Nev's like, I need to save money. You know, that I don't need to, you know, I want to stop drinking. And Oz's solution to that is, let's go and get a fucking skinful. And you're just like straight over his head. So Barry says he's going down the club for an apple juice. So this is Barry's health kick drink. And now, shout out to me mother again. So Wayne is drying his hair with this pink hairdryer. Now, my mother used to have that exact same hairdryer.
Oh, brilliant.
So, but I mean, again, would have been around the same time. So I'm talking, I must have been fucking 7, 8 years old. When, like, you know, 6, 7, 8 years old, when my mother used to have that hairdryer, that exact same one, the pink one with the end. Yeah, I remember it. Like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I'm like, you know, when the memory starts going. So my mother used to have a Wayne's hairdryer, and so as soon as Barry vacates the hut, Moxie is straight on the sausage. Can you have that sausage? And he says, oh, it's cold, and Wayne starts fucking
I'm sure it will work. Yeah, that will work.
Firing the hairdryer on the sausage. So the cut to the bar, Nev's on the phone to Brenda, obviously, and you hear his side of the conversation. I say, oh, how much is that going to cost, Brenda? How much? I'm not complaining, but, you know, you can just see, like, she's putting the thumb screws to him. And he's obviously suffering, and whether, you know, is she being unfair, or is she, you know, are her demands reasonable? I know, who knows, but
she probably wants as most money as possible, so he don't go out and join himself over there.
Exactly. So, Brenda's putting the squeeze on him. So the lads are at the bar, Wayne, Barry, Moxie and Oz, and they're talking about diet and lifestyle and, you know, life today, live today, pay tomorrow. And Moxie says that, you know, all of Wayne's shagging's going to come back and haunt him. He's going to have antisocial diseases.
The clap.
Well, Wayne says, I might get a bit of compensation. And Oz says, well, I hardly think the clap is an industrial injury. And Wayne says, I work hard enough for it. Anyway, so Wayne shoots off. And I think he does something there which is a bit of a prick's maneuver. He shouts down the phone while Nev's on the phone. He says, I'm off to find a lady down the old town, or a frau. Does he say a lady or fraulein or whatever? Anyway.
Yeah.
And Barry's like, talking about, and he says to Barry, he says, I've got a woman here that you might appreciate, but you should make you pay now and live later. So he's obviously talking. Well, I don't think he's talking about a hooker, because he says he doesn't do hookers. But anyway, Bomber comes in, and he's obviously not looking happy after the phone call with his missus. No. And he's obviously been on the phone for quite some time.
Yeah.
They left him at the admin hut. They went in, they got changed, and then they've got down the bar and they're having a drink. So he must have been on the phone for a good half an hour at least. And Oz says, poor little Busby must be working overtime. Do you remember Busby?
Yeah, all the adverts, yeah.
So I used to work with this lad who looked like Busby, right? But like,
Jesus.
It was quite funny. So, when you...
Kind of a smaller version of Big Bird on Sesame Street.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't... This was a long time ago. It was, it wasn't long after I left school. It was in the Northeast, and I can't even remember his name now, but he'd come to work with us, and when you look at someone and you're like, you look familiar, like, and then we were out at a meeting, like we were out doing on a sales meeting and in his local area.
Yeah.
And where he lived, and we bumped into some people who we knew, and these people who we knew went, all right, Busby, like, and I just went, like that. And it was like, obviously he was, hoping that his local nickname wasn't going to follow him to where he worked.
But it did.
But obviously it did. Busby, the kid looked like Busby, so that was quite funny. So yeah, Oz is like, Busby's working overtime. And obviously Bomber says, Ulrich told him where he could find the curry house. Dennis asks about the phone call. Bomber's obviously, wants to keep it to himself.
Yeah. Well, that won't last long. Yeah.
And Oz, subtle as a brick. He's like, nothing, a bloody long phone call for nothing. What does he say? Bloody long phone call to play Hunt the Slipper. And Dennis is like, shh, come on, that's Bomber's business. And Oz is like, well, you said. And yeah, he did say, but, Dennis had the good sense to realise that, Bomber didn't want to talk about it. So,
yeah,
Oz, the brick through the plate glass window, and Den, says again, it's Bomber's business. So Barry, Moxie, and Oz and Dennis, they go for the curry. They're going to go for the curry. Bomber says no. He says, us West Country folks aren't big on East Country grub.
That's it, yeah.
And Neville's not going either. Brenda's putting the squeeze on him again. And he says, I've got to think of a way to save some more money. And Moxie goes, what's she after this time, the sunbed or the bloody jacuzzi? And this obviously upsets Nev. He's like, my wife's domestic priorities are between me and her. And Oz is like, calm down. And Oz says, this is breaking the
musketeer spirit.
The musketeer spirit. He goes, we're all turning into a bunch of greedy bastards, right, Wayne? And anyway, Dennis is the peacemaker as usual. He says, I'm sure that, Neville and Bomber would love to come, but they've got other priorities. And Oz is like, well, I think their behaviour is downright antisocial.
Mm.
And, again, Oz just has got, like, the very concept that people want to do other things apart from what Oz wants to do.
Yeah.
It's fucking so alien to him. It's ridiculous. And also, he quietly says, I don't want to be stuck with fucking, Barry and Moxie all night. So anyway, Barry's like, he goes, where's the curry house? And Bomber says, it's near the library. It's called the Khyber. Barry's like, is that the restaurant or the library? Like the called the Khyber.
The Khyber library, yeah.
Yeah, so they cut to the restaurant, and as the first thing Oz says, like, home away from home. Yeah, there's flock wallpaper, tigers on the wall.
Yeah.
And then I think, I tried to listen a few times. I think he says it's Wayne Gandhi on guitar.
Yeah.
And he says, the only thing we're missing is there's no Newcastle exhibition ashtrays. Now, do you know what Newcastle exhibition is?
No.
Well, Newcastle Exhibition is a beer, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
And it's like a cross between like a lager and a bitter.
Yeah.
Real nice. My granddad.
I only know Newcastle Brown Ale. I mean, that's.
Well, this is it. I mean, Newcastle Exhibition. I genuinely don't think that they sell it anywhere else apart from the northeast of England.
I'm guessing it was quite strong, was it, or not? No.
Yeah, not so much, but it's a Blue Star beer, so it was made by the same. It's a Scottish and Newcastle beer. So
Yeah.
you know, and so have you ever heard like so you've got McEwen's, you know, you had like have you ever heard of Scotch? Have you ever heard of Scotch beer? Do you ever have McEwen's best?
No. We had McEwen's down here in the 80s.
Yeah, so McEwen's used to do a drink called Scotch, which like when you say Scotch to anyone down your way, they think you're talking about whiskey.
Yeah.
Scotch was a beer, was a pint Scotch, was a very dark bitter. Yeah. So there was certain drinks that they only sell in the northeast of England.
Oh, right.
Obviously, brown ale is the best-selling beer in the world. Best-selling bottled beer in the world, and they sell it everywhere. But from the same brewery, like I say, they had Newcastle Exhibition, which was like a mild bitter, like a cross between a lager and a bitter, a real nice drink. And my granddad used to drink it in the club, and I would always drink it if it was available. But obviously, the places where I used to go drinking weren't really. It was like an old man's pub drink. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good thing. So he says, the only thing that's missing is the Newcastle Exhibition ashtrays. And so obviously the waiter comes out and speaks German, Guten Abend, and Dennis is like, vier Tisch bitte. And the waiter's like, oh, you want to, Tisch for vier person or whatever. Obviously, I don't speak German. And Oz is fucking horrified that the waiter doesn't speak English.
Yeah. One of us.
He's like, do you not speak English? And so the waiter goes to get his mate, and Oz is like, would you credit it? An Indian waiter that doesn't speak English. And I mean, again, that's just like any normal, sensible person's like, what is he on about? An Indian waiter in Germany. Yes, he doesn't speak English. And Dennis says, well, we are in Germany, Oz. And he says, exactly. So why doesn't he speak English? They're like, well, I've just explained that. We're in fucking Germany. And he says, he's one of us. Aye, this is a curry house. You can't get much more British than that, can you?
Yeah.
And obviously Dennis regales he says, how many curries have we been for back in England? And he says, I don't know, maybe it's half a dozen. And he says, well, you always call the waiter either Sabu or Gunga Din.
Gunga Din, yeah.
And Oz smiles, the smile on his face. Like he thinks it's funny, he thinks it's hilarious. And he's laughing at his own joke, coming back on him. And he says, now we're in Germany, you expect this lad to treat you like a long lost brother. And Oz is like, so what like? As if Oz is completely right and everybody else is wrong. Again, just living in this fantasy world. And Dennis says, you would have made a great imperialist. So the waiters argue amongst themselves in German, and he's saying to his mate, English.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying that he's obviously saying to his mate, you speak more English than me, you fucking deal with him, you know what I mean? And the waiter gives out the menu and he says, please, please, please. Anyway, so Oz opens the menu and he says, I don't believe it. The whole menu's in
German.
And Moxie comes up with one of Moxie's classic lines. He says, the only word I understand is biryani. And he says, I don't even know what that means in English. And Barry's like, what's Bombay Kartoffeln? And obviously I've looked it up. I Googled that part. Kartoffel is I suspected it was, but Kartoffel is the German word for potato.
Oh, okay.
Bombay potatoes. Mm. So Oz gets the rage and he grabs the menu off. He goes, yeah, come here.
Sabu.
He's like, oh, Sabu, come here. And he says, right. He goes, right, we'll have 2 beers. That's 5 beers. And he says, in a jug of water, savvy?
Jug of water, yeah.
And he says, I'll have 4 chicken curries with rice. And then he does his best chicken impression. And the bloke goes, curry rice. He goes, aye, curry rice. And the bloke writes it down and he hands him back the menus. And he walks away and Oz goes, sound, there you are. And Oz looks victorious. And he said, see, he spoke English.
All the time.
Oh, I mean, absolutely crackers. So they cut back to the hut. Neville and Bomber, they're staying in, they're saving money. And he says, Nev's, I've got to think of a way to save some more money. And Bomber's like, look, this is it, man. Sitting in, feeling miserable. And Bomber says, look, a working man is entitled to some leisure and he shouldn't feel guilty about it. And again, Nev's like sowing these seeds. If I just earned a bit more money, I wouldn't feel so guilty about going out with the lads. And here we go, Bomber's wisdom. He goes, Bomber's first law of economics. The more income he gives me, the more I live beyond it. So, true.
That's it.
The more you get, the more you spend.
Yeah, I think I could relate to that.
Absolutely. And again, Bomber plants the seed. He says, you maybe need yourself a part-time job to do a bit of moonlighting. And Neville's like, that's a fat chance. So Neville, now they're alone, sort of, probes a little bit, what you doing in any way. Bomber says he needs to think, and then Bomber spills the beans about what the phone call was about. And so his daughter's Tracy's run away from home. And he says, if he's not back by Sunday, he'll have to go home. Neville says, we'll have a whip round. Bomber says, don't do that. Specifically, don't do that. Anyway, Nev's then, look, let's go to the pub. He says, Bomber's like, I thought you were saving money. He says, look, it's not as important now. So,
yeah.
They cut. I love it. This is one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
So they cut back to the curry house and they're all eating their poppadoms and, Barry's talking shite once again. And he says, he's like, Indian food's very low in carbs.
That's it.
He's sitting there eating a poppadom, which is pure carbs, about to eat a big curry with rice, which is all carb. Rice is all carbs. And obviously the sauce is full of, basically the sauce, and it just, a curry is not a very, particularly, a curry is just not a very healthy. I mean, you can have it if you have it without the sauce and just the meat and the plain rice.
Yeah.
But, with the sauce and everything like that, it's just not. And he's like, with the various herbs and spices, it's a very healthy diet. And Oz is like, well, how come they're all so skinny then? Well, it might have something to do with starvation and poverty, but, and Dennis says they're wiry like whippets. And Moxie says that's what you'd be like without that ale gut. And again, Moxie's, pushing the boundaries there, I think, with Oz a little bit. And Oz, she's like, hey, this is all muscle. And he's seen the big sweaty armpits that Oz has got. I mean, he's an absolute savage, He says it's all muscle, like the stuff between your lugs. Yeah. So lugs is a proper Geordie word for ears.
Yeah, lugs, yeah.
He's basically trying to say that fucking Moxie's thick. Anyway, so the waiter brings the food out and Oz is like, hey, here we go. 4 steaming hot chicken curries. And Dennis,
well, that's what they thought.
Yeah, well, so Dennis is, dry, very, very dry sense of humor here. And he says, Oz, far be it from me to cast aspersions on your undoubted talents as a mime artist. It's not chicken, it's prawn. And Oz looks up and he's like, prawn? And he goes, aye, prawn. And Oz realizes that he's made a fool of himself. Instantly turns around to Moxie and goes, what are you laughing at? Like as if it's Moxie's fault. So anyway, they cut back to the bar. Neville and Bomber are having a quiet drink in the bar. And the lads walking in. They was like, yeah, comes the curry brigade. How did it go? And then Oz straight away, he's never spoke any English, just German. Never got a damn thing that we asked for. And he said, I told them I wouldn't come back unless the waiter speaks English. And Dennis said, well, that was a waste of time because they don't speak English. And Moxie, he said, if you hadn't flapped your arms around like a hysterical owl, I wouldn't have dead guts now. So Moxie's blaming the prawns, obviously, on the way that he's feeling. So, and Oz says, I noticed that you never left any. Now, Barry pipes up and he says, they gave me some seeds for the herb garden.
That's it. Yeah,
now,
yeah.
I'd like someone to explain to me how on earth this happened. Now, number one, like if I walked into a curry house in England and said, "Excuse me, do you have any seeds for a herb garden?" What do you think they'd say to me?
I'm calling the police.
I'd be like, you're fucking mental. Why would I keep seeds for a herb garden in the curry house? If they're going to make their own herbs anyway, they're going to be down the fucking the garden, like they'll be down their own garden somewhere. Yeah. So the very fact that they're keeping seeds in the curry house is a very strange behaviour. But more importantly, if they couldn't fucking get the fact that they wanted a chicken curry and not a prawn curry, yeah, across, how has Barry managed to have a conversation and tell them that he wants some seeds for the herbs? Anyway, and Neville takes the piss and he says, "What seeds you got?" He goes, "If you couldn't get the food right, you'd likely end up with a great big beanstalk." So then next morning, you see Oz running to the toilet.
Oh, yeah.
And he shouts, and obviously Moxie and Barry are already in there occupied. And he's like, "How are you, lads? Man out here. I had a curry last night." Yeah, Barry and Moxie goes, "Yeah, we know us. We were with you." And so Barry and Moxie have taken it upon themselves to dig a herb garden. And Moxie says, "What's the soil like?" He says, "I don't know. I'll let you know when I find some." Obviously, and Moxie starts telling the story about his family's allotment. And, Barry gets all poetic about allotment. That's the traditional right of the urban working class. And he goes, "What did you grow?" And he goes, "Nothing. My dad used it to bury all the gear he nicked from Fords." And Barry makes a joke. He says, "So a Cortina Mark III will sprout forth." Anyway, so Wayne's coming back doing the walk of shame from last night.
In his pink jacket, am I?
Oh, very stylish, very stylish. And he says, "Who died?" Tries to make a joke. "Who died in the night?" And Barry's over that joke. He's like that. He's like, "Very original. You're the fifth person to make that joke." Anyway, Wayne's like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I got some seeds." He goes, "We went for a curry and I got some seeds and I'm planting a herb garden." And obviously Wayne straight away put me down for a couple of sprigs of the old Bob Hope. I haven't had a good smoke. I haven't had a decent smoke since I've been there. So Wayne's automatically like making it. Well, I mean, I'm sure he probably doesn't think they're doing it, but he's making a joke saying that they're going to grow some weed. And Barry's deeply offended once again. Here we are trying to produce, I don't know what he's, I listened to it a few times, quality vegetation, or, he says something about vegetation, and all you can think about is mind-destroying drugs.
Yeah.
And obviously, Wayne's like, "Well, look, you don't want to mess with the building site. They might want to build on it." And Barry's like, "Well, I'll make a personal plea to Herr Grunwald then. Ask him to change his plans in the interest of conservation." Like, yes, Barry, they're going to change the entire architect's plans for the building site for the fact that you want to grow some herbs. And so Neville's coming out. Wayne's going in and he says, "Do you fancy a beer?" And, Neville's obviously, "I'm on an economy drive." And Barry's trying to, he's like, Nev, look, herb garden. And Moxie says, "We're almost ready to plant the seeds." Barry's like, "Do you want to give us a hand?" He's like, "No, I'm going to plant a few seeds of my own." Not only is he, given the, a metaphorical, answer, but he's actually, what he is doing is he's planting seeds in the storyline as well.
Yeah.
For later on. And obviously Moxie's like, "What does he mean by that?" So again, the cut back to the bar. Dennis is fiddling with the radio and Bomber's playing pinball.
Did you notice one thing about the pinball machine, though?
Well, I'm sure you're going to tell us there, George.
Yeah, well, he's banging away at the pinball, but the points don't change. It's been on zero the whole time.
So it's either not on properly or it's not. Thingy, but yeah,
I'm sure that would have annoyed some people. So just to clear that up.
Yeah, and especially because like the week before, was it last week or the week before, where Oz was talking about how he was 82,000, whatever. Yeah. He goes, "That's my personal best." So,
well, didn't he in the previous episode? Didn't he when he had the fight with the German, didn't he put his head through the pinball machine?
They said either put his head through the pinball machine. So
that could be a reason.
And it's not the same pinball, is it? The guy with the bird in the casino and that.
So, yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So all a bit of, the prop guy obviously didn't do his job properly there. And, they're talking about the radio. He's like, what you after? Radio 2 family favourites. And then he says, what happened to Jeanne Metcoff? Now, you're old, George. Were you around in the days of Jeanne Metcoff?
No, I don't think I was. I think that might even be before my time.
Well, I Googled Jeanne Metcoff because I'd never heard of her. So Jeanne Metcoff is actually a real radio presenter. She died in the year 2000.
Oh, it's a he, not a she.
No, it's a she. I'm saying she.
She. Okay. Yeah.
She died in the year 2000, and she was married to Cliff Mitchell-Moore.
Oh, yeah, the holiday programs.
Yeah.
I grew up with him.
Yeah, Cliff Mitchell-Moore. He did. He was sort of a newscaster, kind of news nighty.
His holiday programs are fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Was he with Judith Chalmers and all that? Was that the?
I think that was even before her time. Well, this was sort of mid-70s.
All right. Well, anyway, I remember Cliff Mitchell-Moore, but very, not very well.
Bald head, glasses, yeah.
Like, but anyway,
slight comb over.
A bit of a Bobby Charlton going on. Yeah. So obviously, I'd never heard of Jeanne Metcoff, so I googled her, found out who she was. Real radio presenter who was married to Cliff Mitchell-Moore. Anyway, Nev comes in with Oz with a football, and they couldn't get a game of football, and Nev gets the round in, and Oz, says the Turks have shied off. It was some religious holiday, so they didn't get a game of football. And then he says, so we just had a game of 3 potting in against the side of the hut. And Moxie's like, I hope you didn't trample our herb garden. And Oz is like, is that what that was? I thought it was a 6-yard box. So I don't know if that's actually like whether Oz is taking the piss there or not. But yeah, I think he is. He sounds like he is. And then Dennis spins this yarn and regales a story of his childhood. No more Jeanne Metcoff. It was part of growing up. The sound of her voice, the beef, the roasting the smell of the beef, glass of shandy with Grandad, into the parlour for your Sunday dinner, hot bath, then sing something simple on the radio, then to do your homework while Pick of the Pops was on, and he's painting and everything. There was and then he has this pregnant pause. He goes, Sundays were really bloody boring when I was a kid.
God, they were, believe me.
So Bomber, it's obviously Sunday. They're following up, and Bomber asks for some coins for the phone. And I was like, well, don't tell me you're getting all sloppy. And Nev obviously understands what the call's going to be about. He says, shut it, Oz. Barry comes in with the papers, and he, do you know what? I never realised how many sayings from Auf Wiedersehen Pet that I integrate into my normal speech. And this is one of them. When someone when anybody ever talks about a newspaper, I always say, yeah, it's intrigue, violence, and sex, and that's just the back page. But that's what they say. It says that's just the football. So as the talks about the football results. Newcastle won 3-1 away. West Ham drew 1-1. Liverpool won 3-0. Says there's no stopping them. Obviously, Liverpool were the powerhouse team in the 80s. And then Oz realises that he's got the Scottish newspaper.
Yeah.
And he starts, very ungratefully, beating Barry around the fucking head with it. And he says, I don't want to fucking read about Aberdeen and Dundee. and obviously Barry's like, oh, thanks very much. And obviously Barry, Bomber's on the phone. Nev clearly realises what's going on. And so he gets Dennis in, and they have a whip round. And he puts the phone down. He walks back to the bar, and Dennis puts the money, the exact thing the Bomber said, don't do.
Yeah.
But
he seemed pleased to get it anyway.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah. Look, he said, look, it's an act of generosity and kindness from his mates. So he obviously can't be too upset with it. And so then they're all. So obviously it's Sunday, so he must have flown back. So it would have been like Sunday morning. He must have went straight to the airport and flown back straight away.
But there was one thing I was reading about. they're in the barn. It's Sunday, but it's supposed to be the day after the curry, but the curry was on Friday night. So it seems like they skipped a day.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that myself. So you were very, very, very well spotted. If that's unless it is, I suppose yes.
Because they're talking about Sunday, and he's rushing to the toilet in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's anyway.
Oh well. Anyway, so maybe a bit of a continuity error there, but never mind it. Like I say, I never noticed. So, like I say, Dennis gives them the money. They cut to the site Monday morning, and everyone's back at work. And Oz comes around the corner and trips on the herb.
On the herb garden.
And they put a sign up, Achtung Herben. And Oz has got the rage, and he picks the sign up. He's like, Achtung Herben, fucking starts smashing it up and that. Anyway, so Bomber gets home. Bomber's wife is played by an actress called Sheila Reed.
Yeah.
Now,
she's done a few things, hasn't she, actually?
Well,
she's Scottish originally, I think, isn't she?
Not just a few things, right? So Sheila Reed is currently 83 years old.
Oh, still on the go, that's good.
She has been an actress for 61 years. Her first, she's got 113 credits.
She has done a few then.
On IMDb. She's got 113 credits on IMDb. Her first TV or film role was in 1960, and she was still, and the last one was last year. And so I'm assuming she's still.
I know she's in Call the Midwife. I did spot her in that. Yeah.
Well, she has been in
Not that I'll watch it or anything.
No, of course, George, of course.
Yeah.
So she's been in The Sweeney, Z-Cars, Doctor Who. She was in the film Brazil. Do you remember the film Brazil?
Yes, yeah.
Film Brazil?
I think I did read with the Doctor Who's. She's been in the 20th and the 21st century. She's been in both the... Yeah.
2 listings of Doctor Who. She was in All Creatures Great and Small, Taggart, Midsummer Murders, The Bill, Bones, which was something I watched recently and I didn't notice it was her. Obviously, she's been in Holby City and Casualty, as every actor has. She was also in Benidorm. So was she the old woman in the mobility scooter in Benidorm? Was that her?
I don't know.
As Doctors, and she was in this. There was a series of TV movies on her credits that were like, I think they were like a spoof of like Miss Marple at Agatha Christie's.
Yeah.
It was called like Death on the Tyne and Dilem for Middlesbrough, and and Johnny Vegas was in them and whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, just, you know, an absolute clear and absolute acting legend. And obviously you put her next to Bomber, and she's a very, very small person, isn't she?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, she's absolutely tiny. I mean, most people are obviously small next to Bomber, but she's very, very small. So, you know, there's no news. The police have been, they ask for a picture. The wife cries. Bomber's like, put the kettle on. You know, young'uns have gone to school, but they're coming back at lunchtime. Go and make the tea. So Nev's late for work. Dennis is on a wind-up, and Oz has got the hump. And Dennis is questioning him, you know, what time did you get back? I was in bed at midnight. He says about 1:30. He says, what are you doing till 1:30? He says, well, I was out walking, I mean, just, it seems like a very, very strange thing to do, to be out walking in the streets at 1:30. And he says, you know, I'm saving money and keeping fit. And he asks Oz to pass the bolster, and Oz just ignores him. And he's, anyway, so he goes and grabs it. He says, what's wrong with him? And he says, did he fall out the wrong side of the coffin? And Dennis says, no, he sent you to Coventry, or whatever the German says. He sent you to Coventry, or whatever the German equivalent is. And Oz just turns around and says, one word, Dresden. Yeah. So apparently Dresden is the German equivalent of Coventry. Cuts back to Bomber, and he's looking at pictures, and you know, and he sort of asks what the note said, and it says nobody cares. And he's asking, you know, have you been rooking? Have you been arguing? And he says, we don't have time, we don't communicate. And then obviously his wife then comes back and has a pop at him and says, well, I'm the only one at home. And Bomber's like, well, I knew this was going to end up at my end of the table. And she's like, well, shouldn't it?
Yeah, the life of Riley over there, I think.
Yeah, if you were here, instead of in Germany, none of this would have happened. And he says, if I wasn't here, the bailiffs would have taken it away. And she's like, your life of Riley, that's what you lead. Don't think I don't know it. And so obviously Bomber reasons out, if I was on the dole, and Patsy's like, look, I just need to take it out on someone. So they cut back to the site, and here we go.
Wayne and Barry.
But Wayne the predator spotted young Tracy, and he's talking to Barry on a break, and he says, oh, she's been hanging around for half an hour. So obviously Wayne's been keeping an eye on her.
He's not going to miss that, is he?
No, definitely not. And obviously Barry says, I've heard of rock groupies, but never cement groupies.
Cement groupies, yeah.
So Wayne goes over, and this is only something that I actually noticed I only actually heard this for the first time, or maybe he's only realised what it meant. And as Wayne was walking off, Barry's obviously thinking about his herb garden, and he says, I wonder if you can grow bromide. Do you know what bromide is? Yeah,
it stops you in prison, don't they? Put it in your.
It. So, like the rumor, like the old. I don't know if it was actually true or if it was an old wives' tale or whatever. But what they say is that when they put they put bromide in the tea.
It dulls your sexual urges.
It dulls your sexual urges. So that's what they do for men in prison. But, so I thought that was quite funny the way Barry said, I wonder if I can grow bromide. Yeah, it was. I thought.
I'm sure he looked into that.
So obviously Wayne goes over and he starts trying to speak. He starts trying to speak a bit of German. Guten Tag, big Yates or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. Again, not a German speaker, and with the accent that is very reminiscent to me, anyway, of the Cadbury's Caramel Bunny.
Oh, right.
She's like, I'm sorry, I don't speak German. And
that bunny was that cartoon bunny was quite horny, actually. I think.
I'll tell you what, if I ever had the ability to shag a cartoon rabbit, it would be top of the list.
A threesome with Jessica Rabbit, that'd be great.
Oh, now you're talking, George. Now you're talking. So obviously Wayne straight away, you're a long way from home. What is it? Netball tour of Europe. She drops it straight away. I've come to see me dad. Bomber Busbridge, he's called. And Wayne's like, oh, he's gone back to, well, I've got some news for you. He's gone back to Bristol. Now, and then Wayne says something quite ironic, I think. And he says, well, come here. He says, you can't hang round here. There's loads of randy Turks around here. You were the one that was just trying to shag her 2 minutes ago. And now he's like, there's loads of randy Turks on the site. But he gives her a couple of quid. And he sends her down the bar and he says, we'll be down there at 1 o'clock. And he says, and she goes,
have coffee and play some pinball, yeah.
And very flirtatious. She says, what's your name there? And he says, I'm Wayne. And she goes, thank you, Wayne. See you at 1 then. And you're like, oh, she's after a bit of Wayne. And Wayne says, mind how you go, love. And then she walks off and the camera focuses in on Wayne and it's like the look on his face. He doesn't know whether to shit or get off the pot. He's like, am I supposed to be randy? Am I supposed to be protective? He's got this look of confusion on his face, which is quite a very, very good piece of acting there by Gary Holden. He's like, oh, like very, very, very confused. And so Oz is on the beer. They cut round. Oz is on the beer. Neville and Dennis are drinking tea, I think. And Oz says, where do you fancy going tonight? And then realizes that he's not talking to Neville and finishes up. I think it was Dennis. And Dennis is like, every day it's the same question.
Same question, yeah.
It's 11 a.m. Let's get through the day before we worry about tonight. And Oz says, that's the only way I can get through the day thinking about tonight. It's the carrot and the donkey principle. And Nev says, beer and donkey more like. And Oz is still like, shut your face, you. Mine and Dennis's social activities got nothing to do with killjoys. And so Oz is now branded Neville a killjoy because he's trying to save money for his wife. I mean, it's just crazy. I'm not a killjoy. I've just got to change my priorities for a couple of weeks. And Oz says, I don't suppose that involves coming out with your mates. And he's like, well, no, that's it. Like, you know, I've got to change my priority. Oz like, does that involve going out with your mate? It's like, again, just straight over his head. And Neville has a pop. He says, oh, you're talking to us now, are you?
Mm-hmm.
And Oz questions, what's Brenda? I got you saving for that's so important. And Neville says, you know, and now, you know, he sort of made a rod for his own back. He wants us to shut up. He's like, I thought it was supposed to be in company. Anyway, so Wayne comes out the corner and he announces Bomber's daughter's here. And he says, and again, I've used this, not the jailbait, but he says, but between me, you and the gatepost, she's a right bit of jailbait.
Yeah.
Again, I use that saying, you know, if I'm talking to someone, I go, between me, you and the gatepost.
Yeah.
You know, and again, like, I've never realized how many like little one-liners from this episode that I've actually integrated into my own vocabulary. So between me, you and the gatepost, she's a right bit of jailbait. And this perks us up. He's like, where is she? Where is she? He wants to go. Then this is really funny. So they cut to the bar. Tracy's on the pinball machine. And there's some young German lad there.
That's it. Sniffing about. Yeah.
And Oz just walks in, basically lifts
Picks him up and throws him away.
And he's like, right, you out. And he fucking launches this poor kid across the bar. You can imagine this kid, he's like thinking he's getting on. Next thing you got Oz grabbing you, launching you across the bar. And Tracy's like, hello, Wayne. Very flirtatious again. And
You've even got her accent off as good as Barry's, I think.
Oh, you think you like that one? Hello, Wayne.
Yeah.
The old, I've got the Bristol, the West Country accent there.
Yeah.
I think it's all the practice from doing the Cadbury's Caramel Bunny. Morning. Remember that one? And a big shout out, actually. You know what you were saying about wanting to shag the Cadbury's Caramel Bunny? One of my mates at school, Alan Oliver. So, Alan, if you're listening, we all know you wanted to shag the Cadbury's Caramel Bunny when you were a kid as well. So, anyway, so he introduced, he said, these are your dad's mates, Neville, Oz, and Dennis. And they sit down, and Oz straight away says, I see what you mean about jailbait. Anyway, so Dennis says, Oz, you know, I can't get the beers in. And Dennis says, do you want a Coke or a 7-Up? And Tracy's like,
Schnapps.
Hello, William, Schnapps. And Dennis just goes, get her a Coke. And Oz is like, but she, and he's like, oh.
Yeah.
And so they, you know, question her, how did you get here? She hitched, she got a lift. Some guy from Swindon brought her all the way to Germany. And then again, she's like, he was called Wayne too, but that was his last name. Yeah, just as flirtatious and as full on as you can possibly get. Dan says, look, you know your dad's not here. We went there, he was worried about you. And she's like, well, there's no need. I'm 16. I'm old enough to look after myself. And you know, he's like, you know, he's like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about it? And so Dennis says, you know, I'm going to phone Bomber, let him know you're here, and let him know that she's safe and she can stay with us. And Tracy still, you know, thinks that the story that her mother is like, can I stay in your hotel? And Oz goes, hotel? And she goes, yeah, my mother said that you had a bar and video games and a swimming pool. And Neville's like, he goes, the pool's empty at the moment. So Wayne's like, how are we going to get her in past the Erics? Yeah. And Dennis says, he says, did anyone see Albert RN? Now, again, I've never seen Albert RN, but what I did do is I did have a little bit of a Google of it and had a look on IMDb.
Yeah.
So it was like a war movie where they fabricate, you know, like, have you seen Escape from Alcatraz? With Clint Eastwood makes a paper mache head.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it's the similar principle, basically. So there's all these people escaping from the POW camp, and they make these fake heads in order to disguise their disappearance. So I don't know what that's got to do with what he's trying to achieve with Tracy, but anyway, that's the thing. And then Oz again says, no, but I saw Albert Bennett. What a centre forward he was. So again, I don't know if you know who Albert Bennett was, but
no.
Albert Bennett played for Newcastle United. He played he died in 2016, and he played for Rotherham, Newcastle United, Norwich, and also the England 23s.
Good on him.
He was at Bury Town as a player manager. So he played for Newcastle United between 1965 and 1969. He played 90 games and he scored 23 goals. Anyway, he was tackled. The reason his playing career came to an end because he was tackled by Emlyn Hughes. Do you remember Emlyn Hughes?
Oh yeah, Liverpool player, yeah.
Yeah. So, and this
very high voice.
Yeah, and so basically Emlyn Hughes tackled him and broke his leg, and this led to Emlyn Hughes being nicknamed the Crazy. It was part of what he did that it was nicknamed the Crazy Horse.
Is Emlyn Hughes still alive? I don't know.
No, he very sadly died of cancer. Many
right.
So I used to love Emlyn because he was the captain on. Do you remember on Question of Sport? It was him and Bill Bowman.
Yeah.
And David Coleman was the host, and Princess Anne. It was like because when he had Princess Anne on it and everything, didn't he? I mean, it was very, and this was like back. This was like when there was only 3 channels on the telly or 4 channels on the telly. So everyone used to watch it. But yeah, he was a very, very funny. I used to really like Emlyn. We used to really like Emlyn Hughes on Question of Sport, and he was always like that with the pictures. Whenever there was an upside down picture, he was always getting out his chair and that. It was funny, real funny guy. But yeah, he died of cancer.
Right.
So anyway, so they they continue now. They bring back and continue the prisoner of war camp theme. So they cut and they're trying to sneak Tracy into the hut, and the music is like military style prisoner of war camp music, the whistles and the trumpets and whatever, and they've got Tracy in a disguise, and every time someone comes along they're stopping and covering her up and looking up and what have you. Anyway, they get her in the hut.
Now, well, one thing I did notice when they walked past the admin hut, Herr Ulrich is sitting there having his lunch, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's also got a beer himself.
Oh, has he?
Yeah, he's got a Beck's.
Oh, well, look, I mean, must have been.
He's having a sandwich and he's got the bottle of Beck's there.
Oh, I'll have to realize. I didn't notice. Herr Ulrich's also. Well, there you go. Look, I mean, it was the 80s. It was the done thing back then, wasn't it? Have a couple of beers for your lunch. So, so they get back to the hut and Dennis starts laying the law down. And he says, he says to Nev, he says, you go and warn Barry and Moxie, there's a lady guest. And he says, and the rule, so he lays down the rules. No swearing, no swanning around bare-arsed, and no breaking wind unless...
Only under the sheets.
And then he says, and this all applies to you, in fact, especially to you. And he's like, all right, I know how to go on. And he goes, and I want you to take that porn down. He goes, that's not porn, Dennis, that's art. And he says, what? Fraulein October is art. And he's like, aye. And he says, right, I'm going to go and, he goes, I'm going to go and phone Bomber. So Tracy's, again, the penny still hasn't dropped with Tracy. She's like, it's a bit grubby, bit basic, but it's nice they give you somewhere to go during the day. It saves you going back to the hotel. And so Oz is by the side of his locker.
Trying to take him down. Yeah.
And then he opens, like she looks at him and he looks at her. And so he opens the locker door to to defend his
and there's more.
And there's more porn on the locker door. It's quite funny. Bomber, he cuts back to Bomber. He's on the phone to Dennis. She's safe. Okay, I'll head back. She's turned up there looking for me. And Patsy says, will she be all right? And Bomber says, she'll be fine. She's in the hut with Dennis and Neville. And then he pauses for a second. And he goes, oh, and Wayne.
And us.
And us. And he's like, oh, and he realizes what they're in for. So, it's time for him to rush back to the airport. And so Oz is like, Dennis, where's she going to sleep? And so Oz says, where's she going to sleep? And Dennis says, I'm going to put Bomber's bed in the storeroom for the night. It's isolated. And he says, you can't put her in there. It's full of dirty old bags of cement and plaster. And Dennis says, it's you I'm putting in there. So Neville arrives and Dennis says to catch up with Barry and Moxie. He says, Barry's face was bright pink and Moxie's going to buy some new pajamas. And I was like, I can't see what all the fuss is about. And Dennis says, look, it's only one night. No one's fussing. Just make the lass feel welcome. And make sure she doesn't get into any trouble. And Oz says, make sure she doesn't get us the sack. And then as if by magic, Herr Ulrich appears right on cue.
Wants to know where Bomber is.
Yeah, well, exactly. So he's like, tell us where Busbridge is. And Dan's like, he had to go home, but he's going to be back tomorrow. So he says, why didn't you tell me? Why was this not reported? And he said, I didn't. It was only necessary for the one night, So he said, I might have wanted a replacement. You must keep me informed. I need to know everything. And Oz is like, trying to get rid of him. He's like, don't worry, Mr. Ulrich. We'll not tell you about anything else. He goes, I hope so. He goes, oh, one other thing. There were some strange happenings.
Happenings at the hut.
strange happenings at the hut. And Neville's like, what sort of happenings? He says, a patch of earth has been dug up and cordoned off. And Dennis is like, like relieved that, he says, it's just the lads doing a bit of a garden. And he says, I've heard of this English passion for gardening, but not think we would see this on a German building society. And Neville's like, well, this is our little home now, Miss Herr Ulrich. We'll have to be making...
Well, it's the Second World War, wasn't it? We used to, grow, dig for victory and all that. So...
yeah. So, I mean, that was, because they obviously, there was the food shortage, wasn't it? So it was all vegetables and that. So anyway, so Herr Ulrich's like, you may continue with your work. And Herr Ulrich finds it fucking hilarious and wanders off. And he says, very kind of you. And Oz is like, straight away thinking the word. He's like, he probably thought we were digging a tunnel. Again, Oz,
yeah.
Oz and his prisoner of war camp jokes. So, so they cut back to the hut, and Tracy's sat on Wayne's bed, listening to his Walkman, reading a pornographic magazine. And she's again they're on their own, very flirtatious. She's like, I hope you don't mind. I borrowed your Walkman. That was a shit. I hope you don't mind. I borrowed your Walkman. Anyway, he's like, help yourself. Do you like UB40? She's like, yeah, Madness and Kim Wilde, of course. Do you like her? And Wayne says, that's putting it mildly, and our records ain't too bad either. And she says, I borrowed one of your magazines, and it was a copy.
Nature magazines.
It was a copy of Mayfair. And he says, you'll go blind, you will. And he says, you've been all right. She says, I need the toilet. He says, hang on for 5. The lads come back. He says, hang on for 5 minutes. The lads will be back. And she goes, oh, that's a pity. Like, again, flirt. And Wayne looks a bit shocked. And he's like, yeah, right. Anyway, first in, brews up. She goes, I've made a pot. I was expecting you. And he goes, a proper little housewife you are.
Yeah.
So Oz and Dennis come in. Oz is like, pour us a cup of tea, will you? My throat's as dry as a vulture's.
Yeah.
Oz! Dennis shouts at him, so I'm assuming he's about to say vulture's arse or, vulture's fanny or, whatever. Anyway, and Oz says, I mean...
But doesn't Neville try and drop his trousers as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, that's it. So Oz says, I'm very thirsty. And Dennis says, all right, I've spoken to your dad and he's on his way back. And Wayne, says, she had the tea ready and waiting. And Neville drops his trousers. Got himself a lovely quality pair of Y-fronts there.
Not as good as Oz's, though, I don't think.
No. I mean, there's no, at least they look clean.
Yeah.
And Dennis screams, Neville! And Barry arrives, and Barry comes and says hello to Tracy, and
pleased to make your acquaintance.
Yeah. And Tracy says, Wayne was wrong about you. You don't have a bad complexion. He says, no, that's me, mate, Moxie. Anyway, so Moxie on cue arrives and he says hello. And she's like, I see what you mean. And then this is for the first time.
Yeah.
We hear Barry christened his nickname.
The Radish.
Yeah. You must be the Radish then. And Barry's like, yeah, that's me. And
no denying it.
Anyway, so Wayne, says Tracy needs to use the facilities, and Dennis is like, of course. We just need to make sure it's not occupied. It's a men-only site. And he says to Oz, he says, Oz, escort Tracy down to the amenities hut. And Oz is like, what? Like, just, no idea. Like, he's like, what amenity hut's this? Like, and Wayne, for the first time, uses, again, one of my favorite words that I still use on a daily basis. He says, the carsy, you Burke. And Dennis gives him a specific instruction. He says, once you make sure it's empty, make sure it stays empty. All right? And Oz is like, guard the door. And he says, right. So that's Oz's capabilities laid out right there. He says, put your disguise on. He says, there shouldn't be any management about, but you never know. So Tracy leaves and the lads spring into action. Nev drops his pants and, Dennis is like, I think we should all go down the club. And Wayne, you can see Wayne's pretty terrified, really. He doesn't want to be left alone with her. And he says, what are we going to do about Tracy? I can't take her back. 6 geezers and one bird looking a bit dodgy. She can probably drink us all under the table. And Dennis says, I know. That's exactly why you're going to stay here and look after her. and Neville's like, Wayne,
the wolf in charge of the sheep.
But yeah, he says, you've got much more in common with her. Music, hair, earrings. And he goes, I don't mean to be rude. He says, and Neville pipes up and he says, I don't mean to be rude. Is Wayne really the type of the right bloke to babysit a 16-year-old girl? And Barry says, it's like putting the rat in charge of the cheese larder. Yeah. That's a phrase I use myself quite a lot when required. And Wayne says, I don't know whether to be flattered or insulted. And Den says, look, he lays it out. It's a process of elimination. He says, look, I can't do it. I'm old enough to be her father. Neville is the obvious choice, but he's going out again. Barry and Moxie had bore her to death with a herb garden talk. And Garden the Bog Door is about all Oz is good for. So that leaves you. And Wayne's like, look, I can see your reasoning, but you can't help notice she's a bit of a come on, isn't she? And it says, yes, I know. And who better to deal with that than a man of the world, you, Wayne? And Moxie, so Moxie pipes up. He's like, it's like the American TV shows. They get the ex-con to go after the bad guy.
That's it, yeah.
And Dennis is like, Moxie, you've hit the nail right on the head. Wayne's like, thank you for that tribute, Moxie. He's like, so you all trust me then, is that it? And Dennis says, and Dan lays it out. He goes, well, of course we trust you. He goes, she's Bomber's daughter, don't you? And we've put our complete trust and faith in you. And he's saying, he's leading him on. And then he goes, and if you lay one finger on her, we'll have your plums on a skewer.
On a skewer.
So yes, Dennis is very, very direct about the potential ramifications that if Wayne oversteps the mark. So Oz is guarding the door. The Turk tries to enter, and Oz is like, you can't go in. He goes, it's kaput. And he goes, go back. And then Oz says, he goes, what are you getting excited for? You lot only get one bath a year, innit? And the Turk starts ramming. He goes, what, today's the day, is it? And like the Turk's obviously shouting. So they cut back and Tracy's got the pink hairdryer out. Wayne has got they arrive with the McDonald's delivered by Barry. And he says, we've got the perfect TV dinner. All we need now is a TV. And she's like, I didn't know they had McDonald's in Germany. Like, yeah. Anyway, so Wayne says, you've got one Grossen Mac, courtesy of Barry the Radish. And you see what she does. So Wayne puts the food on the table. And he sort of turns his back for a bit, and she goes over and picks the food up and puts the food on the bed. Yeah. They have to sit on the bed together. And then Wayne gets a beer, and she asks her one, and she says,
only one mind, yeah.
What would your dad say? And she said, go on, and you get the one. So, and then she obviously, she's since realised that they don't stay in a hotel. So she must have thought I was a right prat. I didn't think you lived here. And he says, I find it hard to believe ourselves. And she says, it was my mother's fault. He says, my dad was having a whale of the time. And he says, we go out for drinks and meals to get out, but that's about it. And then Tracy, you can see they're alone in the hut. She's got what she wanted. She's been fucking, she's been trying to work this.
Yeah.
And she says, I suppose you have a lot of girls then. And Wayne says, nah.
I could shut my eyes and that could be her saying it.
Isn't it? He's like, Wayne's like, not really, only 3 or 4 a week. And and he says, it must be the earring and the accent that they go for. It can't be anything else. And she sticks it right on him. She's like, well, I don't know. I think you're very attractive. And Wayne plays it down. He's like, he's like, look, I don't think you should be speaking to your babysitter like that. And she just lays it straight on him.
You fancy me then?
You fancy me then? And Wayne's like, well, of course I do. But he outlines his position. He says, you're the daughter of a very valued workmate, and I'm under oath, let alone the threat of castration to behave. And again, she sticks it right on him. She don't give a fuck. She's like, nobody would know though, would they? And Wayne loses his temper a bit. He's like, look, you got to drop it. He says it's a Lolita act.
Yeah.
Now, somewhere that we've both been, do you remember Lolitas? Did you ever go in Lolitas?
Yeah, in Thailand, yeah.
Yes, it was a very nice bar. Very nice
bar.
Oh
yeah, very nice. Yeah, very nice. Yeah.
And yeah, so they're all dressed like schoolgirls. And obviously Lolita, I believe, is like, where a young girl tried to, it was a teacher.
The famous film, yeah.
I've not read the story. Anyway, she's like, it's not an act. And he's like, of course it is. I know when a bird's for real. And you're straight out of Tracy or My Guy magazine, basically. And she starts crying. He goes, look, you're a 16-year-old schoolgirl. You're not a raver or a drinker or a foul-mouthed slagget. So
yeah. Eat your chips.
And just eat your chips. And she goes, it helps me get noticed. She obviously got some severe daddy issues there, and she starts crying. My dad's never around. What am I supposed to do? And Wayne says, look, none of us is here. None of us is here to get away from our families. He says, well, Oz is. Dennis has got his problem, but not Bomber. He says he's doing it all for you. You should make him feel proud. And she goes, I know I don't want to hurt him, and he's a good bloke, and I just want him to know. And anyway, so then Bomber walks in the door. And pretty good job that he didn't shag her, really, isn't it? Imagine if Wayne had been banging fucking Tracy and
Bomber comes in.
So and Wayne says, you tell your dad what you just told me, and I'll see you down the club. And obviously Bomber's like, thanks very much. So Barry's still on his health kick, and he orders 2 apple juices. And Wayne says to Moxie, he's like, how's your willpower getting on? Looks like you've had enough. And Oz basically grabs Moxie's head and shoves his nose into the beer. And Moxie breaks. He's, I'm sorry, Barry, but I can murder a pint. And all the lads cheer, hey. And Wayne says, that's just 1 apple juice. And Barry says, you're a Judas. And Oz says, that was the word I was going to call Nev. And Dennis says, it's the Bible again. It's not your strong point. And Wayne says, what's Neville done to incur your wrath? And he says, well, he's not here 3 nights running. And he does, I'm not coming out. I'm going for a walk. And Dennis is, again, the voice of reason. He's trying to save some money, Oz. He points at the drink and he says, that's where most of the money goes. So it's best place to make economies. And he says, I admire his willpower. And then Oz again, Dennis has given a very succinct and straightforward answer about why Neville's doing what he's doing. And Oz says, but what's that got to do with him not coming out on the drink? And Dennis, Dennis puts his head in his hands and he's like, you can't, black, you'd argue black was white with us. Just absolute crackers. So anyway, Bomber and Tracy enter and they say, the Happy Wanderers are here. And Bomber's like, I'll have a William Schnapps. And then Tracy says, I'll have a Coke, please, Wayne. And she's now changed. She's gone from being the alcohol swilling slut
Lolita.
Butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, you know. And Bomber says, get a schnapps down you. And she says, I'm only 16, Dad, remember? A Coke will be fine.
Yeah.
And like as if, so I don't know if she's actually had a genuine change of heart or she's just putting the, like, you know, she's just, you know, acting up in front of her dad. But anyway, so Bomber says, look, he's going to put her in a hotel. I'm going to get the first plane back in the morning. He says, so if tonight you want a bite to eat, the Milky Bars.
He suggests a meal, doesn't he? Yeah.
There's Milky Bars are on me, and all the lads cheer. And I was just like, oh, it's a celebration. Anywhere that sells steak, it'd be all right by me. And everyone starts piping up. And Barry says, look, you know, to avoid any argument, let's let Tracy choose. And Bomber says, that's a good idea. What do you want? And Tracy says, you know, I'd love a curry, but I don't suppose to have them here. And Barry's like, well, that's where you're wrong. So we now enter, I think, is one of the greatest scenes that is ever.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite.
So they cut back to the curry house, and the Indian waiter comes out and says, "Guten Abend." And Bomber says, "I need a table for 7." So the waiter says, "Moment," and Oz just goes, "Oh, just put the tables together." So they put the tables together and they're sitting down and they're having a bit of a chit chat. And Dennis says, he says, "Now Oz, I'll handle this time. We don't want your give us a clue routine upsetting the waiter. All right, Lionel?" Like calling him Lionel Blair.
Yeah.
And Oz says, "All right, ha ha ha." And he looks up and he screams, "How? Sabu!" Neville walks out dressed in the Indian waiter.
Clive of India.
And screams again, "Bloody hell, it's Clive of India." Now, again, I didn't know who Clive of India was, so I Googled that. And Clive of India was the first British governor of Bengal between 1746 and 1774. So, Dennis says, "I've heard of the northwest frontier, but never the northeast." And he goes, "That's what," and Wayne says, "That's what you've been doing. You've been starring in Aladdin."
In Aladdin.
So like obviously
Neville's face as well when he's standing there.
Neville comes out and the look on Neville's face, he's like, "Oh fuck," like, you know, he can't believe his bad luck that they've come. And he says, aye, come on, get it over with. And Bomber just goes, "I don't even think we've started yet." And Dennis goes, "Doctor, I'm in trouble." And everyone screams, "Oh, goodness gracious me." And do you know where that comes from?
Goodness gracious me. I can't think. Was it?
Well, it was so it was a song. So there was a.
Oh, in Boom, Boom, Diddy, Boom, Boom.
Yeah. So there was basically, it was Peter Sellers.
Oh, Peter Sellers, yeah.
And Sophia Loren.
Yeah.
And they were doing a film called The Millionairess.
That's right,
where Sophia Loren was Italian and Peter Sellers was Indian, and she fell in love with the Indian doctor. And they made this song. Anyway, the makers of the film refused to have it on the soundtrack, but they released the song anyway, and it reached the top 5 in 1960.
So. Well, actually, I think I read that he actually fell in real life. He fell in love with her during that film, and she didn't want to know. Oh right, well she was pretty hot, wasn't she? So you can sing. Anyway, that was that. Yeah.
So they start singing that song, and then he says, "That's right, have a good laugh. Just because I show a bit of initiative and get a part-time job." And Dennis says, "What on earth has Brenda got you saving for to reduce you to this?" And he explains, you know, it's the 5th wedding anniversary, 2nd honeymoon. And he says she wants to go on a 2nd honeymoon, and Wayne goes, dressed like that. and he says, "Where are you thinking of going? New Delhi?" And Neville says, "No, Menorca." And Oz says, "I don't even know where that is." And again, this is a repeat. I think they mentioned it earlier. And he says, "Neither do I. How do you think I feel? Neither do I." And anyway, Dennis says, "How much do you need?" And he says, "I've nearly got enough." He says, "I'm just seeing out the week." And he goes, "I didn't think Hughes lot would find out." And if you actually look, like Oz, like cannot control his laughter. I mean, this is one of those scenes where I believe it's a genuine like tears rolling down his face. There's no acting involved in this. It's absolutely like pissing himself with laughter. And they all are, you know. It was just like one of them scenes that they probably did it in one take, and they're all laughing. So Dennis says, look, you know, if you get the order right, we'll give you a good tip. And Oz says, now that that's sorted, can we have a bit of service, please?
We'll give you a good tip.
Gunga Din, and he calls him Gunga Din. And then everyone starts singing. And it goes bum diddy bum diddy bum diddy bum diddy bum diddy bum diddy bum bum bum. And then Wayne goes, new lamps for old, new lamps for old. And then Oz says, have you got any chicken? You know, bark, 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 chicken. Oz does his chicken impression. So that's it. I mean, you know, that scene in itself, you know, whatever. I'm sure there's snowflakes out there probably wouldn't appreciate it, and you know, they probably wouldn't make that these days. And you know, it's bordering on stepping over the line, but you know, it's still funny. And so they cut, you know, and then the final, you know, they cut back to the hut. Oz is up, Barry and Moxie, and he says, look, Barry and Moxie, you want to get outside? The birds are eating your seeds. So Barry panics and he gets Moxie up and he runs outside and he's like, runs outside in his socks and like, you know, he runs out into the mud and he's getting mud in his socks. And there's a dead bird in the herb garden. And Oz just says, he says, you know, it was a stroke of luck, really. And he
could have been us, yeah.
He goes, it could have killed the lot of her. Could have killed the lot of her. And that's it. And that's the end of the episode. So yeah, one of my personal favorites. The titles, we've got obviously Patsy that we've mentioned, Tracy that we've also so Tracy, did we mention about she's an author?
Do you know why she only done, I think it was the 3 or 4 acting jobs, but she got ill, didn't she? And then she took up writing.
And do you know how many books she's sold?
Well, I know she's had about 6 or 7 bestsellers, but I don't know how many.
So I looked it up. She has sold over 20 million books, and the books are printed in 35 different languages.
Oh, bloody hell.
And it says they're historical drama. I mean, they've probably got, I don't know, probably a bit steamy, maybe. I don't know. They're like a bit of a Mills and Boon kind of carry on. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, as far as
she's done quite well for herself.
Exactly. As far as an author goes, you know, you don't really sell more books than fucking, you know, 20 million. That's a considerable amount of money.
I think some have been developed into TV and film.
So I was reading on Wikipedia. So she's got she wrote a series of books called The Seven Sisters.
That's it. Yeah.
And those books have been purchased by a film company. They bought the rights to make the film. So yeah, she's like I said, I mean, you know, very, very famous author. And like I was just saying to you before we started, I've actually just managed to track down an email address for her. So I'm going to email her and see if we can maybe get her on as I mean, she probably won't even reply, but you know, I'm like,
well, you never know.
Hello, very famous author. Would you mind coming on our podcast for nothing? So we'll see. But yeah, so Patsy and Tracy, they get a credit. Herr Ulrich gets a credit. The Turkish Worker. So is that the guy that tries to get in the toilet or whatever? But the Turkish Worker is played by someone called Tony Aleph or Olef.
I wonder what he's up to these days.
Well, he was in Please Sir in 1968.
Oh.
He was in 2 Bond movies, For Your Eyes Only, Never Say Never. He was in The Young Ones, Dempsey and Makepeace, Tales of the Unexpected, The British Empire, and as all good actors are, he was in The Bill at one point. So obviously, yeah, just a big part. You know.
So he's probably doing panto when it restarts.
Yeah. And the 2 Indian waiters and the barman. So yeah, so that is the end of episode 5. So yeah, like I say, one of my particular favorite episodes, and they do definitely, you know, have there's a lot of action goes on in this episode, and they definitely, you know, they bring, like I say, that the point where Oz is crying with laughter in the curry house at the end is one of the greatest things. So As always, if you have any comments or suggestions, like I say, support or abuse, please don't hesitate to email either myself or George on Auf Wiedersehen Again @gmail.com. Follow us on the social medias, Instagram @Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast, Twitter @Auf Again, and Facebook Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. Like and share. And remember, if you want to be in with a chance of winning the Pat Roach book, you need to be a follower of us on social media. And like I say, there's posts on social media right now. You need to like the post, share the post, tag your friends, and all the instructions are on there. And like I say, if you are on YouTube, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel and click the bell, and that will alert you to any new episodes. And the new episodes are released every Friday at 10 a.m. And if you are on YouTube and you want to listen in the car instead, we are on Spotify, iTunes, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Soundcloud, and many, many more. And as always, our music was composed and performed by Mr. Lee Dosky, the guitar man. And please do like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, we are sponsored by Top Gun Tattooing, number 12, the Harris Arcade in Reading, www.topguntattoo.co.uk. Their number is 01189 968 667. And remember, you can get a 20% discount off your tattoo. As a listener of the podcast, you contact Zach from Top Gun Tattooing. And like I say, you just got to say to him, Hadaway and Shiteman, and you will get a 20% discount off the tattoo. And remember, free tattoo for every listener. If you want to have Neville and Lottie tattooed on your arm, we at the Auf Wiedersehen Again podcast will pay for it.
And film it.
And film it, obviously. So that's it for this week. We are another episode down, so we'll be back next week. So next week, we will be back with episode 6. And we will also be announcing the winner of the Pat Roach book competition. So remember, if you want it, you've got to be in it to win it. If you want to be a winner, you've got to get on the social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So like the page, follow us on social media, like the post, tag 3 friends, and share the post, and you can be in with a chance of winning the Pat Roach book. But until next week, George.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen Pet.
Oh, yeah, man. All out of options, nothing to choose. I'm pissed out on Netflix, I'm sick of the news. I'd sign up to Sky, but I don't want to pay. I've been on furlough since May. Now I'll go and listen to a Cockney attitude.